You remember the Manston Asylum centre, the processing centre in Kent, that site that by any standard descended from a holding facility into a holding pen, from a crisis into a scandal, from accommodation into a stable. This was not merely a bureaucratic miscalculation, but a fundamental breach of human dignity. And among the more harrowing episodes was the death of Hussein Hasib Ahmed, a 31-year-old Iraqi asylum seeker who died in hospital in November 2022 after contracting diphtheria while unlawfully held at Manston. Though the precise cause of death remains medically imprecise, he was reported to have suffered from fever, breathlessness, and fatigue, symptoms ignored in an overcrowded, barely sanitary environment where even basic medical, unsanitary environment where even basic medical care was delayed or absent. He was detained for nearly a week, far beyond the legal 24-hour limit without exceptional ministerial authorization, and his death is not an aberration, it's an indictment, and originally designed as a temporary facility to process small boat arrivals within 24 hours. Manston held over 4,000 people in late 2022, more than double its maximum capacity of 1,600. It became, in the words of one union official, a humanitarian crisis on British soil. And people were forced to sleep on damp floors with a single blanket. Showers were a luxury. One Sudanese man reported being allowed just a single shower in 33 days. Infectious diseases like scabies and diphtheria ran rife. A Syrian woman endured 11 days in a freezing tent, miscarrying without access to medical care, while her children vomited from a stomach bug and lacked clean clothing. It's shocking, isn't it, really? In one case, a 17-year-old Iraqi boy was registered as an adult, aged 5 years older than his real age. Others were told to go back to your own country. Such casual cruelty cannot be passed off as the result of pressure. It's a result of policy and the result of the prejudice that overtook the last government and, frankly, still threatens this government. An independent inquiry into Manston is now underway, chaired by Sophie Cartwright KC. Its remit is to examine the decisions and the failures that led to the conditions at the site between June and November 2022. The former Home Secretaries, Priti Patel, Suella Braverman and Grant Shapps, are expected to give evidence alongside senior civil servants and officials, and probably alongside former Prime Ministers Johnson and Rishi Sunak. But the inquiry has been downgraded from statutory to non-statutory by the current government, limiting its power to compel witnesses and evidence, and that choice alone speaks volumes about the political discomfort surrounding this scandal. Manston was not just a failure of facilities, it was a failure of the system, of planning, of humanity, of legality, and phones were seized unlawfully, hijabs were removed without consent, children were denied basic safeguards, and traumatized individuals were left without legal advice. Manston is something that is in the context of a border migration policy defined by deterrence, opacity, and rhetoric. The so-called hostile environment, inaugurated over a decade ago by Theresa May, she was building on ideas already circulating under David Blunkett, matured into a system where refugees were criminalised before being heard and held in conditions that would disgrace a penal colony. Indeed, the Brookhouse inquiry, published earlier, revealed abuse in immigration detention more widely, including detainees with PTSD being chained during medical treatment and others being violently restrained during mental health crises. The parallels are not incidental, they are structural. And at Manston, the backlogs in asylum processing, a disgrace that continues in the Home Office, where 96% of 2021 applications remained unresolved a year later, meant people were held unlawfully simply because the system was incapable of moving them on. What should have been a 24-hour stay became weeks of indefinite suffering. In such conditions, disease thrives, trauma deepens, and dignity evaporates. And what happened at Manston is a national disgrace. It's not merely the consequence of an overwhelmed system, but of deliberate political choices to demonise migrants, to underfund processing, to ignore warnings. David Neal, the then Chief Inspector of Borders, said he was rendered speechless by what he saw at Manston. That, I believe, says everything. Accountability must now follow, not just in the form of compensation or retrospective statements of regret, but in the wholesale reform of how we treat asylum seekers, people fleeing war, fleeing persecution and torture. The assumption that the majority are even economic migrants or tricking the system is abhorrent and flies in the face of the principles laid down in the 1951 Refugee Convention. If we don't like that convention, get rid of it. Change it. Have an international meeting and change the convention. Because we cannot be alone in finding fault with that and trying to duck our responsibility. If we don't like it, change it. But don't play stupid games because you've got the power to do so. People like Priti Patel, Suella Braverman, Grant Shapps must be held responsible for this dereliction of duty. This is no humane way to detain people indefinitely under immigration powers. The case of Hussein Hasib Ahmed should be a name etched into the conscience of the Home Office and a clarion call for reform. Anything less would be to fail not only him, but every person who ever dared to believe Britain was a place of safety, a place of refuge, a place of hope.